Hey, this is Rick, your bike fitness coach. We're going to talk a little bit about saddles today. Really destroyed saddles again. So here's a little test coming up, a little quiz. You could stop the video at any time. I want you to tell me what the two things the following saddles have in common. There's going to be several saddles coming up. Tell me what they have in common. Saddle number one. Pause the video if you want. Saddle number two. Specialized S-Works power mirror. Saddle number three. Cell Italia SLR C59. Guess yet? I'm sure most of you have already guessed it. The two things these saddles have in common. Schmolke TLO 55. The SMP, Cell SMP full carbon. And Pièce de Resistance is the Crown Herzog Ebhardt. Answer will be coming up shortly here. Two things, very, very high price tag and carbon rails. So what do I keep seeing on customers' bikes coming in? They go from they want to lighten the bike up, so they go with a higher quality saddle, carbon rails, a lighter saddle, more comfortable, they're thinking. We're talking about crushed carbon rails yet again. So how and why does this keep happening? So most metal, in fact, all metal, steel, hollow titanium rails, you'll see the, let's call them the ears, the sides of the saddle clamp that holds the saddle rails onto the seat post. You'll see either a 7 RND or 7mm only label on the ears of the clamp. Standard carbon rails are 7x9. A little bit of history. If you go back to the original carbon rails on saddles, they were 7mm round, and people kept breaking them. So they made them 7x9, giving a little bit more rigidity and robustness to the carbon. Trek has a 7x10 option. Here's an example. You'll see a 7 RND or 7x10. Make sure that the clamp, as you see in the lower right, the clamp does match, the clamp needs to match the rail of the saddle. In fact, if you look at this, the blue part will match together. The part that's on the left is on the inside, the rail goes in, the saddle goes in, and the part that's on the right side goes around. The part that's in the red will hold the rails. The part that's in the blue will support the clamp onto the saddle, top of the seat post. Another example, 7mm rail only. And do not put a 7x9 on that clamp. 7x10, do not put a 7mm round. You'll never be able to lock it down, or a 7x9. Just put a 7x10 rail on that clamp. Here's what's happening. If you look at, I kind of blew this up, the 7-round top outside, let's call them the ears, that's sized directly for a 7-round clamp. If you put it on the 7x9 rail of the saddle, you look where it's crushing it. You start clamping that down, you force that 7x9 into a 7x7 opening, and it's going to crush the carbon, destroying the saddle. It's even worse. Here's a 7-round clamp on a 7x10 rail. Look how much of that 7x10, look how much of that rail is going to be crushed and destroyed. Again, you're spending $450, $500, $600 on a beautiful saddle, and it takes the wrong clamp and you just destroyed it, throwing all that money out. One last warning, this is what you got to look for. 7x7 is for the round rail at the top, 7x9, you see how it's ovalized, the clamp at the bottom. A better clamp. I just did a inventory of my bikes and my training devices in the shop, and it turns out every one of mine is a clamp like this, where you can use one clamp that will work with a 7x7 or a 7 round. It'll work with a 7x9. It'll work with a 7x10. Basically, you don't have the outside ears clamping over the where the rails go through here. You don't have that. You have more of a clamp this way. So it can grow and shrink based on what clamp or what saddle rails you have. Remember, the left to right is going to always be 7. The top to bottom is going to be 7 or 9 or 10. Here's a Thompson clamp. Again, it is allowed to grow this way, and it doesn't have the ears on it that clamp onto the saddle the other way. Other issues I see all the time with saddles. Do not over-tighten the seat post clamp. Here's a great example of an over-tightened seat post clamp. Is crushed the seat post in how many areas? All the way on the left side. If you look at the left arrow by itself, it's cracked all the way around. Big chunk of carbon is missing from the middle. It's cracked all the way down to the lower arrow. Another example of over-tightening the seat post clamp. It's also applicable if you over-tighten the stem clamp. Imagine doing this to the carbon steer tube and then the handlebars coming off on a downhill. Be very careful. Use a torque wrench or take it to a certified mechanic at a certified bike shop to set this up for you. Yet again, here's a truck that's been, the seat post has been over-tightened. Here's another example that metal can also fail. Here is a Thompson Elite post that it looks like, if you look at the 2 arrows at the top, it looks like there is some metal fatigue caused by corrosion at the top. There's looks like some kind of a corrosion is forming on the red arrows. It's an older post that's taken a lot of vibration, a lot of abuse, and there's a huge crack in the metal as well. So be careful with, always inspect your parts before going on your next ride. And I see this all the time. This has already been addressed in another video, but specifically the only saddles I have seen this on, people coming in, of course, most people come in will, again, I've seen a lot of specialized power and other specialized saddles. That's usually the go-to saddle. They're very comfortable, especially the power saddles for guys. The problem I'm seeing is that the glue at the back of the saddle rails, somebody might hit a bump or is riding the bike, pressing down maybe harder on the, in this case, this would be harder on the left leg than the right leg. They're always twisting the saddle one way over the other every pedal stroke. The glue eventually fails and the whole saddle twists this way as you see this. It will twist slowly. And what happens is people come in and say, all of a sudden, I don't know what's wrong. All of a sudden, I have a tremendous lower back pain when I'm riding my bike. Well, again, your pelvis is like this and your spine is like this. And when you're trying to ride, your lower back is trying to support and straighten everything out. And so I recommend also, when you're inspecting your bike before a ride, go through the frame, make sure there's no cracks anywhere, go through the components, make sure everything looks solid, everything's torqued down correctly, and also stand at the back of the bike looking forward and kind of hunch down a little bit and look straight down the level of the saddle. Is the saddle straight? Is the saddle twisted? If it's twisted, it's destroyed. Go get a new saddle and get repaired. Otherwise, your lower back is going to give you some complaints as long as you ride a saddle like this. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. And as always, be careful out there, and see you in the next video.